And as he got older, he developed cataracts in his eyes. Thick protein coating over the lens. And when he looked at the light, the cataract diffused the light. So he started to paint exactly what he was seeing in those impressionistic patterns. And when he was in his elder years, the doctor said, listen, you have cataracts. We can take those cataracts out. And he said, are you crazy? I spent 45 years of my life trying to see this way. Now, if I put that painting back up on the screen, would you see it differently? Come on. What's changed? Your mind changed. You made new connections, and because you made new connections, your brain is firing in new patterns, new sequences, and new combinations, and you're perceiving what always existed, but your brain wasn't wired to perceive it. Now, do you think you perceive reality based on how your brain is wired? What's the difference between the wine connoisseur and the person who drinks wine out of a box? The wine connoisseur had learned about wine. He experienced and paid attention to the flavors. He looked for the tannins in the oak. She smelled the aroma. And every time they associated that smell with that taste, with that wine, they were enhancing the circuits and connections. And the person who drinks box of wine doesn't care about the taste. They want the high. And if you gave that Cabernet Sauvignon to the box of wine person, they don't have the circuitry to perceive reality the way the connoisseur does. Now, the person who lives in guilt and the person who lives in suffering, their circuits have fired and wired together to form a community of neurosynaptic connections. Just like the wine connoisseur, more intricate circuits. In other words, their brain is a reflection of their mind. So would you agree then that the person who reads Braille, who's blind, and their two fingers is where their mind is? And they've fired and wired the same set of circuits in these two fingers mapped in this part of their brain over and over again. So well that more of that real estate in that part of the brain is for those two fingers. And if you did an autopsy of the Braille reader's brain that's correlated with these two fingers, more enriched connections. Because as we fire those circuits over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, there comes a moment where this chemical is released that causes neurons to develop a long-term relationship and sprout new intricate connections, more densely packed jungle of neurons. So then the brain is the reflection of the person's attention, intention, repetition, and learning, and instruction. So if the person is insisting on guilt, thinking the same thoughts and performing the same actions, would they have a more densely set of neurological circuits that's related to how they're thinking and feeling. So then here's my next question. If you accept that you perceive reality based on how your brain is wired, do you think you perceive reality based on how you're emotionally feeling? You do? You know, they did an experiment where they took a group of people, clinically depressed. And by the way, depression is so high in the United States right now. But you take a group of depressed people and you show them equal pictures of a wedding scene and a funeral scene. And then you call them into the lab a couple hours later. And you say, which slides were there more of? Wedding or funeral? They all say, oh my God. There are way more funeral scenes. If you show those same slides, equal slides, to people that are well-adjusted and happy, and call them into the lab an hour later, they see more wedding scenes. So we perceive reality based on how our brain is wired and how we emotionally feel. So we're back to thinking and feeling again. Now, how many people here know someone who, now, I'm taking a chance, who has mastered suffering? Come on, I had an Italian grandmother. I know this one really well. Listen, when my Italian grandmother said the rosaries, I thought there was a war coming or something. It was a very intense moment. I thought she was having a heart attack or a seizure or something. She was praying and suffering at the same time. And I don't know where I'm going. By the way, I grew up thinking Jesus Christ was Italian until I was in 4th grade. She was talking Italian to him. He looked Italian in all the pictures. So you know someone who's mastered suffering, right? And my definition of mastery is when our internal chemical state is greater than anything in our external world. We've memorized the emotional chemical state, and nothing can change us. So you know someone who's mastered suffering, right? How do we know that? Because you say to them, hey, did you read that book that I gave you? No. Did you watch that DVD? No. Hey, listen, we're going to go out to dinner. We're going to do a little dancing. We're going to go see some comedy. We're going to walk down the road and have some ice cream, and then we're going to meet up with some friends. You want to come? No. I've memorized this emotional state, and nothing in my environment, no person, no event, no experience, no condition, no thing is going to move me from this internal chemical state. That's mastery. Now, we have 3 brain systems in one. 3 brains that allow us to go from thinking to doing to being. And because we have these 3 brain systems, that person moved into a state of being so well that it is now an automatic subconscious state of mind. And that internal chemistry is so memorized that nothing can move them from it. And because we have 3 brain systems in place that allow us to go from thinking to doing to being, we can master an internal chemical state of joy. And we can insist on joy just as well as the person who suffers insists on guilt. And we can memorize that internal chemical state so well that nothing from our external environment can move us from it. Because the first brain that we have is the thinking brain. You're listening to me right now with your thinking brain. And as you pay attention, and as you begin to think in different ways, you're reinforcing circuits. You're learning philosophy and information. But that's not enough. We have to apply what we learn. We have to personalize it. We have to demonstrate it. We have to teach the body what the mind has intellectually understood. And when we get the body involved, when we modify our behavior, and we have a new experience, that new experience produces a new emotion. Because the end product of every experience is called an emotion. And feelings and emotions help us to remember experiences better. They tag the experience as important. You remember catching that fish off the coast of Cancun? You remember that surprise Christmas present? You remember your first kiss? All right, maybe your first... You remember where you were on 9/11? You remember these things because something from the environment, some stimulus from the environment, produced some internal chemical change. And this external thing that produces some internal chemical change, you pay attention to. You say, what is this that's producing this feeling? Oh, it's that person, or it's that event, or it's this thing. And the identification with that external thing, with this internal change, says, that's a memory, because it's an event in and of itself. So now, with the new experience, in the midst of the experience, everything we're seeing and smelling and tasting and feeling and hearing, all of our five senses are sending information back to the brain through 5 different pathways. And it's causing gangs of neurons to string into place and to release chemicals. And those chemicals signal the body so that you can remember the event. So now we're conditioning the body to learn what the mind has intellectually embraced. Now we have 2 brains working together. The emotional brain, the limbic brain. Now, to get people to go from thinking to doing is like herding cats. Because most people, they want to stay locked in that intellectual realm. So let's just say you read a book on compassion by the Dalai Lama. And now you decide that you got some knowledge and you're going to forgive your mother-in-law. So you forgive your mother-in-law and you have this new experience and you feel good. But you can't be asked to be canonized as a saint now. You can't have the experience once. You have to be able to repeat the experience over and over again, over and over again. You got to make it look natural and easy and second nature. And when we repeat it over and over again, we activate that third brain, that subconscious brain, the cerebellum, that is in a state of being now. We've practiced it so many times, we don't have to think about it any longer. And when we're in a state of being, our internal chemistry has been memorized. And now we master forgiveness. We master compassion. And we don't have to think about it because we are it.